Find a seat. And let's, shh, shh, shh. Quiet, it's time to start. Shh, shh. Girls, up here, up here. Let's pay attention, let's pay attention. All right, I need Kalima. You just volunteered, thank you. And all right, come on, you volunteered, come on. She was shaking her head no, so she volunteered. All right. I got to find the first. All right, there's the first one. All right. So, Kalima, come over here. You've got the first verse and the chorus. Okay, and you turn it over. And you've got verse 3 and verse 4. So I'll try to tell you when to turn it, okay? What? Yes, hold it up. Yeah, right there. All right, are you ready? Hold it up so we can see it. Here we go. It seems so unbelievable, and yet they say that it's true. They're teaching our children in school now that humans were monkeys once too. Turn it, Kalima. Turn it. Boom, 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 I'm no kin to the monkey. The monkey's no kin to me. I don't know much about his ancestors, but mine didn't swing from a tree. This monkey business has to go because it just isn't true. It's such a disgrace to the monkey, disgrace to the human race too. Boom, boom, boom. I'm no kin to the monkey. The monkey's no kin to me. I don't know much about his ancestors, but mine didn't swing from a tree. It's unbelievable. And surely it's true that God made man in his image. No monkey business will do. Boom, boom, boom. I'm no kin to the monkey. The monkey's no kin to me. I don't know much about his ancestors, but mine didn't swing from a tree. All right, thank you. You can be seated. Thank you for your help. Let's do I Am the King of Kings, I think is what it's called. He is the king. That's what, he is the king of kings. Sing it.
He is the King of kings. He is the Lord of lords. His name is Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Oh, he is the King. He is the King of kings. He is the Lord.
Who's the King of Kings? Jesus, right. You got it? We have to sing it again. All right. All right. Quick announcement, and then we'll watch our lesson video. But we need, if we have, yeah, we do. We got teens tonight. You have a service project tonight. As soon as you're done, we need the big ladder from the garage brought into the back here. Okay, and just Probably need help setting it up too, but we'll let you know when you get that far. All right. So if we can get done maybe even 5 minutes early, that'll give us time to get in here. And all right. Sound good? All right. All right, let's watch our lesson video, and I did not get what the topic is tonight ahead of time, so I'll find out along with you.
The three bright blue stars that make up Orion's belt look pretty small up in the night sky, but actually blue stars are some of the most massive and brightest stars in the whole universe. Stars burn hydrogen for fuel, and blue stars have a lot of hydrogen. Our sun has enough hydrogen to keep burning for around 10 billion years. Blue stars have much more than that, but they won't last as long because they burn through it so much faster. Many blue stars shine 200 times brighter than our sun because they burn their fuel so quickly. Blue stars are like SUVs. They have a big gas tank, but very poor mileage, and they illuminate all parts of the night sky. How do so many short-lived stars exist in a universe that is supposedly 13.8 billion years old? Secular scientists think that stars constantly form as a result of gas clouds being compressed together, even though none of them have ever seen this. Plus, gas particles in clouds bounce against one another. This outward force far exceeds the inward pulling force of gravity. Blue stars churn through their own fuel so fast that they cannot last billions of years. And based on their observed luminosity, the most massive blue stars cannot last even 1 million years before running out of fuel. If the universe is 13.8 billion years old, as secularists claim, blue stars should not be here anymore. But they are, and we find them all throughout the universe. As God said through his prophet Isaiah, "My hands stretched out the heavens, and all their host I have commanded." Blue stars fit perfectly with the Bible's idea of recent creation. So, next time you see a blue star, think of our Creator, whose hands created the whole universe.
Couple questions. Put me back on, Adam, please. All right, couple questions. How long can our sun burn? How long would it burn if it... 10 what? 10 billion years. All right, very good. Very good. After you get downstairs, you can open that, all right? Whoops, sorry. All right, listen. Shh. How much more brighter is a blue star than the sun? Emmy? Stephen? 200 times. You were close. Yeah, you were on the right track. All right. Now I forget what the other question was I was going to ask. Got a couple more questions I was going to ask. I don't remember what they were. What? Yeah, how long does it take for a blue star to burn out? How long would it? Was it 1 million? Or was it 1.5? Or was it 1.5 million? I'll give it to you because I don't remember if it was 1 million or 1.5 million. All right. Let's listen up. Shh. So you got to listen to the lessons, okay? You never know when I'm going to ask questions. You might get some goodies. So, all right, let's have the preschool through... What grade did we go to game? So it would be through second? Okay, preschool through second grade. Oh, wait, before you go, wait. I got one more announcement. We have a new American citizen with us tonight. Isn't that neat? Somebody who just became a citizen of the United States of America. Anybody guess who that might be? Mr. Jason took his oath. He had to take a big, long test and about all kinds of questions about our country. Took his oath today, so he's an official citizen now because he's originally from Australia. But All right, now you may go. Preschool through second grade. All right. Third and fourth grade, go with Mr. Jason. You missed yours, Lily. Go down to games, Lily. Preschool, kindergarten, first, second are supposed to be going to games. So, third and fourth, did you go? Did they go? All right. Fifth and sixth, you may go to your classroom, which I believe is at the end of the hall. You don't need to run, though, please. George, don't run, please. He went to kind of a jog, but from a run to a jog. All right, teens, teen life, you may go. Oh, the rest of you are stuck here. Sorry about that. Judges chapter 6. Judges chapter 6. Trust you all did your duty yesterday and voted. Hope you did, those that can vote. Sorry, Isaac. Can't vote yet, but things don't always turn out the way we want, but it's still our responsibility to in America, a free country that we have that right to do that. It's a responsibility that we have. So, and we still don't know the end result. We'll have to wait a few more days, probably, it sounds like. So, Judges chapter 6. We've been talking a series on the power of prayer. And specifically, we've been looking again at some prayers in the Bible that reveal how prayer not only changes things, but how prayer changes us. And remember, this has been, I don't know how many weeks, this is part 10, so at least 10, we've had some weeks in between too, but so 10 weeks at least of individuals we've looked at, and we've seen that prayer is not about manipulating God to see things our way, but it's about bringing us to a point where we can see things God's way. And so it's about aligning the desires of our heart with the desire of His heart. So far, we've talked about Elijah, Joshua, Hezekiah, Elisha, the apostles, Solomon, Jacob, and 2 weeks ago was the apostle Paul. Tonight, we're going to look at a man by the name of Gideon. I think we'll conclude with this, and we'll do start a different series next week. But Judges chapter 6, I believe probably you all know the account here of Gideon, so we're not going to get into a lot of the details, but I just want to see how his life was changed when he spent some time with the Lord. All right? So Judges chapter 6 and verse number 1, it says, "The children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of Midian 7 years. And the hand of..." We had to study in the number 7 a while back, and one was about judgment. This was part of it here. "But the hand of the Midian prevailed against Israel, and because the Midianites, the children of Israel, made them the dens which are in the mountains and caves and strongholds. And so it was, when Israel had sown, that the Midianites came up, and the Amalekites and the children of the east, even they came up against them. And they encamped against them, and destroyed the increase of the earth, till thou come into Gaza, and left no sustenance for Israel, neither sheep, nor ox, nor ass." And by the way, this is something they would do every year at harvest time. Okay? Verse 6, "Israel was greatly..." Verse 5, "They came up with their cattle and their tents. They came up as grasshoppers for multitude, for both they and their camels were without number. And they entered into the land to destroy it. And Israel was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites. And the children of Israel cried unto the Lord." Now skip down for verse number 11. We'll get a couple of verses in between there in a few moments. But look at verse 11. It says, "And there came an angel of the Lord, and sat under the oak which was in Ophrah, that pertained unto Joash the Abiezrite, and his son Gideon, threshing wheat by the winepress, to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him, and said unto him, The Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor." Again, you know the story, this account, and there's a lot involved here, but I don't look at basically one aspect. But by way of background, we just read here, Israel was faced 7 long years of unrelenting oppression and violence against them. It says their crops, their cattle, their sheep, the possessions were plundered, destroyed. Time and time again, it says many of them resorted to hiding in caves and so forth there among the rocks. Talk about a miserable existence, right? At least we have a bed, right? And we've got a home we can go to, a house we can go to afterwards after our rough day. But anyway, they under severe oppression there from their enemy. And so it says here that they cried out to God for relief. And what did God do? He heard their cry. And so that's what we notice here in God's call to Gideon. We noticed there in verse number 11, we read that there Gideon was threshing wheat by the winepress. Why? It says he was not out in the open like you would normally do and let the chaff blow and that sort of thing. He was doing it in hiding to hide from the Midianites, trying to preserve what little he could to feed his family. And no doubt even beyond that probably. But here he was in hiding. And as he was there, we notice here a messenger of God appeared to him with a message. And it says, verse 12, the angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, the Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor. It's an interesting choice of words there that we'll hopefully touch on before we end. But the angel of the Lord appeared to him. And we're going to see briefly here, this was not, as we've talked before, this was not just any angel. This was indeed because of what Gideon does, and he offers sacrifice to him and worships him, and the angel receives that worship, and so we know this was more than just an angel. This was the Son of God in this form that appeared to him, as we see in various places throughout the Old Testament. But notice here, Gideon had a discussion, an encounter with the Lord himself. Today we would call that prayer, right? We would call that meditating on the Word of God, conversing with God. That's what we talk about prayer. It's how we communicate with God. Verse 12 says, the angel said. Verse 14, it says, and the Lord looked on him and said, go in this thy might. That's still the angel speaking. So again, that verifies to us that this was not just an angel. This was the Lord himself. That pre-incarnate appearance of God the Son. But verse 14, again, he said, the Lord is with you. Verse 14, he said, go in this thy might, and thou shalt save. He said, Gideon, you will save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. And Gideon, verse 15, basically, I'll just sum it up. He says, who, me? You ever thought that? Ever said that? Gideon said, how in the world can I save Israel? And he goes on, and he says, my family is the poorest in the tribe of Manasseh. The Manasseh was the weakest tribe or smallest tribe of Israel. He said, I'm the least in my father's house. So Gideon said, God, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel here. And yet God called him a mighty man of valor. I'm probably skipping ahead to my closing here, but we'll touch on it here so I don't forget. But you notice here, God saw Gideon not only as he was, but as he could be, as he would be, as he obeyed God and the will of God. God sees us the same way, not just what we are now, but he sees what we can be, what we can do if we'll only trust him and obey him. But we see here God's call. He said, Gideon, you are the one. And I'm going to just pause just for a moment there. Don't you suppose that Gideon spent much time in prayer? It says Israel cried out to God, but I'm sure Gideon was one of those that said, God, when is this going to end? When are you going to deliver us from the hand of the Midianites? And I'm sure that every day probably God, he prayed that God would deliver him, but he probably never thought that it would be him that would do it, that God would use him to accomplish that deliverance. Isn't that the way it often goes with us? We want things to happen. We want, for example, we want God to bless our church, to grow our church and so forth, but you realize how he does that? He uses us, doesn't he? And you could put anything in the blank there, but to understand God wants to use us to accomplish his will. We often think, well, I wonder who's going to do that, or who can do that. Well, Gideon wondered that, but God said, Gideon, it's you. It's you. And I like that last phrase there. He says, verse 14, have not I sent thee? So that was where Gideon's trust needed to be. He said, Gideon, I'm the one that's going to send you. And so you will be successful, and you will be used to deliver Israel from the hand of the Midianites. And so, verse 16, the Lord said, surely I will be with thee, and thou shalt smite the Midianites as one man. Didn't mean Gideon alone would do the fighting, but the victory is going to be so decisive there. But notice the promise. God said, I will be with you. After Gideon said, listen, I'm the poorest member of my family. My family is the least important of the tribe of Manasseh. The tribe of Manasseh is the least important tribe of Israel. And the angel said, the Lord said, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I will be with you. And he says, you will smite the Midianites. And so we know God's promises are greater than our circumstances. The key is to get our focus shifted off of our weakness, as Gideon was focusing on, and will soon be changed. Well, that's our point tonight. We'll see how prayer changed him. But get our focus off of our weakness and focus on God's power. And if we do that, we're on our way to victory. We're on our way to effective service. Remember what the Apostle Paul wrote? God has chosen the what? Foolish things of the world to confound the things which are mighty, the weak things of the world, and so forth. So just remember, when you feel weak and inadequate, you're exactly who he wants to use, right? When you feel like it's out of your league, when you feel like that there's no way you could do it, God says, you're the one I want to use. Because then he can show forth his power to the greatest extent. We see God's call upon Gideon, but now let's go ahead and look here at, before I actually get to his courage, look at God's confirmation. Verse 17. He said, now I have found grace in thy sight, Gideon says, then show me a sign that thou talkest with it. Gideon still wasn't sure. He needed some reassurance. And you know this, we won't read these verses here, but 3 times through the fleece, and remember that? 3 times God promised his powerful, abiding presence. Very direct promises. Well, verse 12, he said, the Lord is with thee. Verse 14, he says, go in thus thy might, have not I sent thee? And then verse 16, I have jotted down. We already read, surely I will be with thee. And so, but Gideon had to make sure. And then the final thing was, look at verse number, where are we? Where he prepared the sacrifice. Verse 18. He says, depart not hence, I pray thee, Gideon again speaking, until I come unto thee and bring forth my present and set it before thee. And he said, I will tarry until thou come again. And Gideon went in, made ready a kid, that is obviously a goat, baby goat, and unleavened cakes of an ephah of flour. The flesh he put in a basket, and put the broth in a pot, and he brought it out to him under the oak, and presented it. And the angel of God said unto him, take the flesh and the unleavened cakes, and lay them upon this rock, and pour out the broth. And he did so. Verse 21, then the angel of the Lord put forth the end of his staff that was in his hand, and touched the flesh and the unleavened cakes, and there rose up fire out of the rock, and consumed the flesh and the unleavened cakes. Then the angel of the Lord departed out of his sight. And so Gideon brought a sacrifice, and this was the final sign, I guess you would say, that this was real, all right? But he brought his sacrifice. And let's understand, when we use the word sacrifice for Gideon, it's a literal sacrifice. What did we just read? How Israel was plundered year after year after year. They had no crops, they had no cattle. Gideon was in secret threshing wheat, trying to get a little bit of what he could stored up for his family that maybe the Midianites couldn't get their hands on or wouldn't know about. And so to bring an animal, the Midianites, it said, it had wiped out their flocks. And so this was a true sacrifice, wasn't it, that we see here? His resources were limited. This constituted a very significant economic and sacrificial investment because his resources, as I said, were limited. And so if his sacrifice was accepted and consumed by fire, it would be gone. And indeed it was. again, more evidence beside the very plain wording here that the Lord was the one speaking to him, the Lord looked upon him and so forth, but it was indeed God that he had been communing with. So now let's look at what happened. All right, so he's been talking to God. That's been our series about prayer. So he was communing one-on-one with God. So how did that change? Did it change the circumstances? Yes. I mean, very shortly after this, Gideon got the army together, and you know the story, how they went against the Midianites. How many Midianites were there? Anybody remember from, probably stretching my memory too, but wasn't it 120,000, was it? Or is that correct? Or am I wrong? I guess if you don't correct me, then I'll stand by 120,000. Anyway, and how many men did Gideon have to fight them? 300 he ended up with. 300. Started with 32,000, went down to 10,000 after the first test. And then after the second test of alertness and so forth, he went down to 300 men. And they went up against Midian, and of course they won. But so yes, the circumstances changed because of Gideon's prayer, but guess what? Again, the crux of our series has been how prayer not just changes things, but it changes us. Here is Gideon in hiding, threshing wheat. I'm not trying to blame him. We would hide too under those circumstances. But he was in hiding. He had to have the fleece dry first, or wheat wet first, or whichever one it was, and then reversed it and so forth. And then he offered the sacrifice. And if it be you, that's why he said, "Wait here, let me get a sacrifice." And so all these things to confirm what God had said. And so here's the man who said, "Who, me?" But what's he saying now? Look at verse 24. And we notice a change in Gideon because of this time with God. It says, "Then Gideon built an altar there." I think, did we skip a part there? No, let's read there. It says, Gideon built an altar there unto the Lord and called it Jehovah Shalom. Unto this day it is yet in Ophrah, the Abiezrites. So already we see that transformation taking place. The one who said, "What has God done for us lately?" is now building an altar of praise, and he called it Jehovah Shalom. And by the way, shalom, the word shalom, we often relate to the word peace, but it's a little deeper than that. There's more involved in that. It means to be whole or to be complete. Okay, and that's why I suppose you're at peace, but it means to be complete. And so God not only gives us peace in times of fear, but he holds us together, right? He holds on to us, giving us strength to carry on, that we might make it through. And so he doesn't just give some level of peace, but he makes us complete. Everything we need to get us through. And now, verse 25 here, another step up. It says, "And it came to pass the same night that the Lord said unto him, Take thy father's young bullock, even the second bullock of 7 years old, and throw down the altar of Baal that thy father hath, and cut down the grove that is by it, and build an altar unto the Lord thy God upon the top of this rock in the ordered place, and take the second bullock and offer a burnt sacrifice with the wood of the grove, which thou shalt cut down. Then Gideon took 10 men of his servants and did as the Lord said unto him." Now, do you think that took a little bit of courage? Not just to tear down an altar of Baal, which, again, we know was becoming prevalent in the land, but where was this altar? What did it say there? Verse 25. The altar of Baal that, who has? Your father. Gideon's father had an altar of Baal in his backyard, if you will. And so the angel of the Lord said, "Gideon, the first thing you got to do, you got to start at home. You got to go take care of that altar to Baal and tear it down, build an altar unto the Lord there." Now, don't you think that took a little bit of courage to do that? I mean, what would his father say, right? Now, I don't know. It doesn't necessarily say that his father was a worshiper of Baal and so forth. I mean, they had community, the idols of Baal in different areas of the land, and so maybe it was just on his land, but it says that your father has. So it was in his father's possession, at least, or on his land. But anyway, what did Gideon do? He didn't try to come up with excuses. Well, Lord, that's a hard one. That hits too close to home. No. He didn't try to justify inaction. No. What did he do? He obeyed the Lord. He obeyed and honored the Lord. God said, do it. Verse 27 says Gideon took 10 men and did as the Lord said. Can you see a change in Gideon's demeanor, in his courage for God? He asked no questions this time. He said, well, Lord, we're going to do that fleece thing again. No, he didn't do that. He just went and did as God had said. And one more thing before we close. We're getting done early, sorry. But one more thing here. I want you to notice, because of his obedience, guess what happened? It impacted others' obedience for the Lord. The Bible says, no man liveth unto himself, no man dieth unto himself. Okay? Whether we live or die, we are the Lord's, but others take notice. Okay? And so look at verse 28, where it says, when the men of the city arose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was cast down, and the grove was cut down that was by it. Again, this was the community coming here. But it says, the second bullock was offered upon the altar that was built, and they said one to another, who hath done this thing? And when they inquired and asked, somebody said, Gideon, the son of Joash, hath done this thing. Then the men of the city said unto Joash, bring out thy son, that he may die, because he hath cast down the altar of Baal, and because he hath cut down the grove that was by it. Look at verse 31. And Joash said unto all that stood against him, will ye plead for Baal? Will ye save him? He that will plead for him, let him be put to death while it is yet morning. For if he be a god, let him plead for himself, because one casteth down his altar. So now, all of a sudden, Gideon's dad speaks up. And why didn't he speak up before? I mean, the altar was on his land and so forth. Well, because Gideon took a stand. And his obedience impacted the lives of others. First and foremost, his family, right? His own dad. And so Gideon's obedience impacted the lives of others. Our obedience to Christ makes a difference. Okay? You may think it only affects you or only affects your family, but our obedience to Christ makes a difference. Our life, our commitment to Christ, our faithfulness will either encourage others in their walk with God or it'll hinder others from seeing the importance of faithfulness and obedience to Christ. I mean, if you're not here in church, they look around and say, well, nobody else is coming. They're not coming. And they see it as less important for them. Okay? But when we're faithful and when we're here where we ought to be in the house of the Lord, it's an encouragement to the others who are here. Okay? Just being here is an encouragement to the others that are here. Certainly encouragement to me that you're here, but it's encouragement to others. So we can say, well, it's just Wednesday night. It's dark. It's cold. It's whatever. Or I went Sunday morning. Why should I have to go Sunday night? I'm fed up, spiritually speaking. But the point is, your obedience impacts the lives of others. So just remember that next time when we say, well, I'm not sure if I want to serve the Lord in that area. I'm not sure if I want to do this or make that commitment here. Or just remember that, all right? And so now let's go back and just finish with the verse that we mentioned earlier on, where when God came to him, he said, what verse that was, but he said, Gideon, thou mighty man, was it verse 12 maybe? Yes, verse 12. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, the Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor. Gideon didn't feel so mighty at that time. Again, he had to verify some things and to discern some things in his life, I guess you would say. But God not only saw him as he was, where he was, but God also saw him as he could be and as he would be in the will of God. And God sees us the same way. He sees what we are now, and he sees what we can and will be if we're willing to step out on faith and just obey his voice. All right? Any comments? All right, next week we'll plan on starting a different series. Not sure. I've got a couple thoughts in my head, but not sure where I'm going to head yet. But we'll find out next week, all right?